Shabbat Shalom. It's so wonderful to see everyone as we celebrate Ben and Philip this morning. So many smiling faces. What a beautiful, beautiful way to spend Shabbat. And it's also a beautiful way for me to come back home. I've been gone for the last couple of weeks, and it feels so good to be home. Spending some time with my family. I was at a conference last week in Los Angeles of the Jewish Emergent Network, a group of 7 different kihilot, 7 different communities across the United States coming together to learn some Torah together, but also to inspire ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to try to take our Torah and our commitment to our synagogues and our communities to the next level. And throughout these past 2 weeks, I've been exposed to so much Torah. There's been so much good learning, so many things that I want to be able to teach about and talk about. But I thought this morning I wanted to talk about something that I think is really important. And it's something that, unfortunately, I think we've neglected and we haven't taken as seriously as we should. This past week in Los Angeles at a synagogue called Ikar, one of the 7 members of this emergent network, there was a speaker, and the person giving the sermon spoke so beautifully, so eloquently about the idea of these Israelites who are in the wilderness, and here they are kvetching, and we say over and over again, we look at them in the Torah and we say, look at these ungrateful people that have had miracle after miracle happen to them. They've been fed from manna from heaven. They have experienced Yetziat Mitzrayim. They have gone from slavery into liberation, into freedom. And here they are complaining. And this individual, the darshan who was speaking, made us look at it a little bit differently. And he made us ask the question, what is at the center of their anguish, of their fear, of the things that are inspiring them to fetch in the first place? And it was a beautiful message in and of itself, but then he also said that just a week and a half prior, he had lost a friend of his to suicide. And to be able to come and to talk and to give a sermon that morning, that Shabbat morning, and the message that he told us to take away from this Torah portion was understanding, listening, empathy. And instead of casting judgments, instead of labeling people, instead of giving names to different things, to say, what's really going on here? A little bit later in this past week, I had the opportunity to sit in a room with 40 people as they talked about prayer, authentic prayer, beautiful ideas of what prayer means. Not a traditional idea of just liturgy or being able to say something in Hebrew, but to experience what a prayer moment is. To talk about moments of sadness, sorrow, but also of joy and hope, and to really talk about prayer. And this morning, I had the blessing, we all had the blessing, of learning Torah from 2 of my students. And what a beautiful idea it is to learn about compassion and about responsibility from these 2 young men. So we ask ourselves, ma kesher in Hebrew, what is the connection that binds all of these together? Well, the connection that binds all of these examples together is that all of these examples of Torah come from people that we would call kids, children. The person who was giving the sermon a week ago at Ikar in Los Angeles is a 13-year-old celebrating his bar mitzvah, who had lost a friend of his to suicide 10 days before. A 13-year-old talking about empathy and compassion in the face of suicide. The 40 people in that room talking about prayer, authentic prayer, where a young girl said that she went to her grandfather's grave in Poland and sat at the grave and wept and prayed to God. And another young man who said that he felt connected to prayer when his friend enlisted in the military, and he felt worried and scared for what his friend was experiencing. These young men and women were members of our teen mission, who are getting ready to go to Israel at the end of June and to spend 5 weeks together learning about Israel. So teenagers 15 to 18 talking about true authentic prayer, talking about prayer with words that we often never do as adults, and being honest and being open and sharing the things that make them tick, the things that make them scared, the things that make them cry, but also the things that bring them joy. And this morning, we got to learn from Philip and Ben another example of 2 people celebrating their bar mitzvah and teaching us. But somewhere along the way, we got into this point, we got into this mentality where we started looking at when children, at when the younger people, when these younger generations are talking, we hear them, but we're not really listening. We see a bar mitzvah, or we see these different opportunities as kind of an educational stepping stone to get to that point of maturity where you can have a real, true, authentic opinion. We see it as a way towards something greater, a way towards the maturity, the intelligence to be able to have an opinion that matters, instead of recognizing these moments of Torah for what they really are. Those moments being true, heartfelt, and honest responses to not a world that they just perceive, but a world that they know, a world that they understand, a world that looks very different in the eyes of our younger people than it does to us. And yet here we are, with these voices still speaking, calling out to us as individuals, but also as a community, to take their words seriously, and without any kind of anger, without any frustration, asking us to simply listen. We have something to say. It's time to hear it. What a blessing, what an opportunity it is to be able to learn Torah together this morning, that our parasha so beautifully demonstrates this tension that we have of being able to listen and to understand one another. If you'd like to follow along with me in your Eitz Chaim, you can turn in your Eitz Chaim, the red book in front of you, to page 840 is the beginning of our parasha. And in Parashat Sh'lah L'kha, this parasha that opens with the statement, Sh'lah L'kha anashim ve'aturu et ha'aretz Canaan asher ani noten libnei Yisrael. God speaks to Moses and God says, send out emissaries, send out spies, send out these individuals who will scout out the land, this land called Canaan, this land that I am giving to the children of Israel. And so Moses takes this commandment seriously, and he sends out 12 heads of the tribes, and he says, you are going to go out and you are going to scope out the land, and you are going to report back and tell us what you find. So the scouts go out, and they come back, and what do they say? Indeed, it is a land flowing with milk and honey. It is a land that meets all of our expectations, all of our wildest dreams, and then some. They even have to take some of the fruit back on sticks, holding it between them, because the fruit is so big, the fruit is so nourishing and monumental, that it takes more than one person to carry a vine of grapes. But, because as Jews, whenever we give good news, we also have to have a but at the end of it. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the land's flowing with milk and honey. It doesn't matter if it's everything that we've ever asked for. It doesn't matter if it's everything that God promised us, because there are people there already. There are people much greater than us, more numerous than us. They have fortified walls. They have giant cities. They could crush us in an instant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the place is flowing with milk and honey. They are giants, and we are but grasshoppers. And we are but grasshoppers. This line, which Rabbi Starr so beautifully spoke about earlier, this line becomes a defining moment of what happens to the Israelites in the wilderness. This defeatism, this inability to have hope, to have faith, becomes a plague that spreads throughout the entire Israelite camp. But there are two individuals who say no. Joshua and Caleb stand up and they say, it doesn't matter. If the land is filled with giants, if it is filled with these, we didn't see these giants talking about us as if we were grasshoppers. We didn't see them smashing their swords together, getting ready to destroy us. God gave us something. God gave us a promise, and God said, go forward. And if you will go forward, then we should go forward. If God says go up and take the land, then we should go up and take the land. These two words in the Torah, alo na'aleh, that we shall go up. And the Talmud in Masechet Sotah takes these two words, alo na'aleh, that come from the mouth of Caleb, who says, surely we should go up. And they says that so much faith did Caleb have that he wasn't even talking about just going to the land of Israel. He said, if we alo v'na'aleh, if we truly go up, if God wants us to go up, then we will go all the way to heaven. Even if it means us building ladders to get to heaven, that is exactly what we will do. But the tragedy that takes place in the story, the hard part of the story, is that the individuals who carry all of the influence, who carry the inspiration to the camp of the Israelites, are the 10 defeatists, the people who see the promise of God and the promising future of God. And instead of thinking about hope, instead of thinking about the opportunity to be able to listen to these two men who are telling them exactly what can be done and what should be done, the entire Israelite camp resorts to despair. And in those moments of despair, all of Israel is punished, except for two people, except for Caleb and except for Joshua, who had the chutzpah, who had this audacity to be able to say that we trust in God. We believe that something can be better. We believe in the future that God promised us because the future is supposed to be good. And when we scouted it out, we did indeed find a land flowing with milk and honey. So often we see the voices that are the most important voices around us as grasshoppers, as insignificant. But when we do so, we do a disservice not only to ourselves, but to the entirety of who we are as Jews. Because those individuals that we see as grasshoppers, I assure you, God sees as giants. This young man who spoke so beautifully last week at Icar in Los Angeles is not a grasshopper. The 40 young men and women who got together this week in this building to talk about authentic and beautiful prayer are not grasshoppers. And Ben and Philip and their cohort back there are not grasshoppers. The young men and women that make up our religious school who have given so much of their time and their energy and even their saved money to give to charitable places all throughout Metro Detroit. The young men and women who make up this country, who continue to push us for advocacy and action, who have followed in the wake of the students of Parkland and others to say, we want change, we want something to be better, we want a future that we can believe in. None of these children are grasshoppers. And it's time, ladies and gentlemen, that we start to think about what that means. That when we hear these authentic voices, that we don't just pay them the lip service of hearing them, but we truly listen. Because there's something beautiful and there's something important that they have to say, because they're looking for a future that isn't swayed by any kind of ideas of nostalgia, not ideas that have been influenced by a system that was broken or a system that we know how it works and you have to sit back and wait and this is the process it takes. This is a time and a moment where young people are speaking. They're speaking words of Torah, and it's time for us to listen. So I want to offer us a blessing to do something a little bit different this Shabbat morning. So if you are comfortable, if you are able, I invite you all to please stay after services this morning, to come have lunch with us, to sing some Shabbat songs, to have a l'chaim, to be able to sit and to celebrate. And when you see Ben or when you see Philip, instead of wishing them a yasher koach or a good job, I want you to really talk to them and say, this is what I heard in your Torah. This is the Torah that you taught me this morning. Ask them questions. Ask them what it's like to talk about Parashat Sh'lah L'kha when they're graduating from 7th grade and going to 8th grade. Ask them what that parasha means. Because so often we think that we know. And we think that we have the correct idea because we're the seasoned people who have understood this all the way up until we are. But there's Torah to be learned. There are opportunities for us to hear the voices that we so often decide not to hear. We have an opportunity this Shabbat to learn from giants. We have an opportunity in every day and every moment to learn from giants. Alo v'na'aleh. If we decide to do this, if we decide to really listen, to open up our hearts, to open up our minds, then we will go up. We will truly go up. We will truly ascend. Even if that means building ladders to reach us to heaven. Shabbat Shalom.